The Toymaker and the Bird, written by Pamela Allen and read to you by Miss Keating. Once upon a time, there was a man who lived all alone in a little house in a dark forest. He carved toys from the wood of the trees. He was called the Toymaker. The Toymaker could play the most beautiful music. It was as if he had the magic fingers. When he'd finished his work for the day, the full, rich sounds of his violin would float up into the sky. The birds flying high above the treetops would hear and fly down to perch in the branches and sing. All those who heard it were entranced. It was magic. One evening at the end of summer, a little brown bird high in the sky heard the magic sound and flew down. She landed on a branch close to the Toymaker. As she listened, a spell crept over her. She was enchanted. She began to sing. Her voice was so pure and perfect that all the birds stopped to listen. Together, the little bird and the Toymaker made a sound that caused the trees to shiver and murmur in wonder. All through autumn and winter, the little bird stayed close to the Toymaker, waiting for the evening when he would unpack his violin. She would perch on his shoulder while he carved his toys, or sit on a branch while he gathered wood for the forest. Every evening they would join together to make the wondrous sound that only they could make, and all the birds would gather to listen. How tiny and perfect she is, he thought. The forest had been dark and cold all winter, but one day when they were out together, a little warm spring sunlight filtered through the dense canopy from above. Then the spell was broken and the little bird remembered the great open sky. Her heart skipped a beat. She dreamt she was flying, floating, gliding, twirling and diving high above the trees. They came to a river. Above the river could be seen the sky, clear and bright in the afternoon sun. Suddenly, the little bird left the shoulder of the Toymaker and flew high above the swirling water. She flew up and up until she was just a tiny speck. The Toymaker called and called, come back, my love." But there was no answer, only the sound of the river. Spring gave way to summer, with no sign of the little bird and no sound from the violin. Instead, the Toymaker sat outside his little house on an old chair weaving. Once a single bird flew down, but didn't stay. She wondered what he was making. Then one evening, there she was. She sang and sang. The Toymaker picked up his violin and the joyous sounds they made together soared high above the trees. All the birds gathered round. The trees leaned in a little closer. Even the moon shone brightly in celebration. That night, the little bird was asleep, perched on the back of the big saggy armchair with her head tucked under her wing. The Toymaker crept in and looked at his precious little bird. She was not colourful like some birds, but to him she was beautiful. As he looked, he saw her heart beating and her wings flutter. He was afraid. What was she dreaming? "I will look after you," he murmured. "I will keep you safe." He stretched out his long arms. Gently he clasped her tiny body in his big hands. Carefully he placed her in the cage that he'd made with so much care. Quietly he closed the door. Startled, the little bird woke up. Her wings flapped wildly as she flew into the bars of her cage. She tumbled to the floor. A tear slowly fell. "Don't you see?" he cried. "Now we can be together forever and ever." Next morning he took her with him into the forest, and in the evening when he unpacked his violin and began to play, the birds flew down from the sky to listen. The sounds he made were rich and full, but not a sound came from the little brown bird. The Toymaker looked after his little bird, as though she were a princess. He gathered her favourite berries from the forest and took her with him wherever he went. Each evening, through the long dark winter, the Toymaker unpacked his violin and played his enchanting music. But still, not a sound came from the little bird. Then, as the days grew warmer and a little spring sunlight filtered through the dense canopy from above, the Toymaker remembered. He remembered the wondrous music they'd once made together. He remembered how joyfully she'd sang. He looked at his sad little bird. Slowly, he opened the door of her cage. In a moment she was gone, flying high above the trees, and although he waited and waited, he never saw her again.